Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a Backlot Banter movie review. I am Tanner Dykstra. I'm the one who does machines, if you will. I am joined by Abram Buner, who I would describe as cool but crude. And we are here today to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. The newest film from Paramount Pictures, the newest installment, newest cinematic journey for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those lean, green, mean machines. But before we get into the movie and our thoughts on it, I want you to subscribe to Backlight Banter. I want you to like this video. I want you to comment your thoughts down below on Mutant Mayhem, this newest animated film. And if you go down in the description, you'll find a link to our Discord server. There you can talk about movies, you can talk about video games, you can talk about, what do we got, music, comics?
Yes. Yeah.
Star Wars specifically, I think.
Yes, that's there too. Talk about Ahsoka with us, because that's gonna be good.
It's gonna be on everyone's minds. Anyway, you can talk about anything there with us. That link's in the description. Abram, thank you so much for joining me on this TMNT review. Now, I presume you caught my my TMNT reference at the beginning for myself and you.
Yes.
Now, Abram, I have a quick. This is a pop quiz before we get into the review. Could you describe the one who is cool but crude? Which TMNT turtle is that?
I'd call that Mikey.
Cool but crude is Mikey? No, he's a party dude. If you remember correctly.
Is this some sort of like character poster situation we have here, Tanner? What are you doing?
No, this is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show theme song.
Oh, are we taking it back to the 80s?
Yes, we are. Yeah, and
Mm.
Abram, I pulled this up specifically because your favorite Chuck Lorre wrote that song.
Yes, I love Chuck Lorre. Now, Tanner,
anyway,
this is actually an interesting place to begin. First of all, who are they referring to if it wasn't Mikey?
Raphael, he's cool but crude.
Would you describe it? I suppose so. See, Tanner, I was very passionate that we did this review because I'm a big Turtles fan, but not of,
Are you? Okay.
But not of the 80s era, if you can believe it. I didn't grow up watching that show. I grew up watching the 2003 Four Kids show.
Yes. Okay, I'm vaguely familiar. I was never a TMNT head myself, but I respect their presence in various multimedia platforms.
Yeah, I am an enormous TMNT head before that era. And now there's no cool but crude, none of this fucking Chuck Lorre nonsense in my TMNT.
Okay.
And this is not my TMNT either. And this is a franchise, of course, that goes through many iterations and reboots to varying levels of success, particularly in a sort of cinematic sense. I would probably make the argument that before Mutant Mayhem, that there's not a single universally enjoyed TMNT movie. I'm not sure if you would disagree. You could maybe say the film from the 90s.
I'd say maybe that first trilogy as well. I don't know a whole lot, but I think people respect that first movie from 1990.
The first, for sure. Then
we'll see. I don't know.
We're in the sewers by the third one, Tanner, in terms of quality.
There we go.
But the 2007 movie, I also have a very nostalgic soft spot for. It's one of the first films I was adamant that my dad take me to go see.
That's the previous animated one, right?
Yes.
The all-animated one? Okay, yeah.
And I am also a defender of the TMNT movies that Michael Bay directed. Don't tell me he didn't direct them, because he did. You and I both know he directed those movies.
Abram, I'll let you know that you said that and it just flew by in my mind. Because, Michael Bay, TMNT. I almost said Transformers there. He did direct those, but anyway, yeah. I haven't seen those. I've seen the second one.
It's better than the first one. But the point is, I was a little nervous going into Mutant Mayhem because I love my boys, but I wasn't sure how they'd be done. I have this sort of this Sonic-shaped like cloud over me with all of these sort of quote-unquote kids IP that are sort of transcendent of generation. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 to me is a travesty of a film. But also because I'm 22, right? I wasn't 7. My concern was that at 22 and not 7, I would also not like Mutant Mayhem, because John and I were one of 2 couples that did not have children in the theater. Everybody else had a very, very young child. I thought we were in trouble. I thought we were in big trouble, Tanner, especially because you saw it before me. No, you don't like this movie as much as I do. But coming out the other side of Mutant Mayhem, I thought it was great. I had a really great time with it. I'm excited to get into it. There's also, though, no doubt in my mind that my attachment to the IP in general does help my enjoyment of the film, because I do think it has issues primarily in terms of pacing and sort of the coherence of its plot. I don't.
Yeah.
I that's about where I sit on the matter.
No, Abram. Here's the thing, because I initially gave this film a 5 out of 10 when I walked out of the theater, and I think I was being a little harsh on it. My opinion has improved in the day since I've seen this film now, because TMNT Mutant Mayhem is like it's a cute, fun movie. Like, there's not really a whole lot wrong with it. The thing that was weighing heavy on my mind is that this is very this obviously is coming from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, I believe, is his producing partner's name. Yes.
Director.
Yes. No, is he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the director. No, the director is a different guy.
Yeah, I'm talking about a third person. I messed you up.
Okay. Anyway, this comes from Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg.
Yes.
And it's a very different style of writing to many TMNT movies. It's much more tuned in to like modern pop culture. These are, as Seth Rogen has sort of talked about in the promotion of this film, he's like, I always watch a TMNT movie and I'm like, these are adults doing this,
right?
And he really wanted to change that up, and to this film's credit, he absolutely did. This very much feels like these are child characters. They are talking like teenagers, they are acting like teenagers, but not necessarily in a overwhelmingly like verbose or just like annoying way, I would say. At times I think the writing can be a bit like nudge nudge, hey kids, we're just like you, we get it, we're Seth Rogen, I'm 50 years old. But I'm still in touch with the kids. Like when they're talking about, this is just like Hulk from Avengers Endgame when he did this and this and this and this. Or I logged plenty of hours in Forza Horizon and so I'm good at this.
Yeah.
There are those pop culture touches to the writing that can be a bit grating, but at the same time, that's also what gives it so much, what makes the writing of this feel so unique and make the character feel so endearing.
Yeah, I mean, the script is really interesting because, again, I'm one of these sort of boomer TMNT fans where I've got my turtles and anybody else's turtles are wrong. And so I was like, to me the turtles look and sound and feel a particular way. Yeah. And the 2003 show is not what this is. And you're right that this really isn't like the turtles have ever been, I don't think, because there is this interesting sense throughout the film that I think is quite compelling, wherein on one hand it is very particular to the moment, but on the other hand I think there's a lot of stylistic moves that sort of invite TMNT fans of all eras into the conversation, because it almost does feel a little bit out of time, because I think about the heavy use of synth throughout the score. Right. That is very 80s. That feels like we're going back.
Reznor and Ross, baby.
Yeah. It feels like crazy track titles for the score. Also, you should look them up on Spotify. But you have that. But then you also have like the Blackstreet, No Diggity, Old Boy montage.
Yeah, we are
sequence.
It's also, this is the second summer blockbuster this year that's like really dialed into this like 90s East Coast hip hop sort of style.
Yes.
And I really dig that. Obviously, we have Ice Cube in a role here, the villainous role of Superfly.
Yeah.
He comes out to the song Superfly, which I think was a nice touch. And he's also using his lyrics, Ice Cube lyrics, as like catchphrases throughout the movie, which I found a bit like, that's odd, but okay, well, whatever.
Well, and I think that's the thing about it. It's the film's tone and dialogue and just, I think, general feel is this amalgam of where Turtles began in the 80s, and like you get the pizza place called Laird after the creator of TMNT.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah,
and Eastman High, obviously Kevin Eastman created the Turtles. So
these are references and Easter eggs that you caught that I did not, but yes.
Right. So we're going back to that, obviously, and a lot of modern Turtles media does harken back to that, especially like in the game space right now. It's very hip to be classic Turtles, but I think this film also nicely steers away from just solely pandering to that audience.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate. And I have to say, Tanner, I'm typically not one for pop culture references to this degree. The most egregious example for me, and this is such a personal grievance I have that's going to make sense to a very small subsection of the audience, but the Gilmore Girls are rebooted on Netflix. and Lorelai Gilmore talks about marvel in various things in a way that feels so grating to me because it feels like we are so clearly railroading a gimmick onto characters.
Okay.
Or even like Glass Onion last year, which is probably a more useful analog for me to draw. The use of COVID
Another
and
Netflix property.
yeah, the use of COVID and Among Us and various
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
To me, dates the film in a strange way because I don't really see Benoit Blanc sitting in his bath playing Among Us as like a particularly coherent moment beyond a joke. What I think is effective here is that the turtles talk the way, frankly, you and I talk to each other, and the ways that my friends and I talked to each other in high school. I think that there's a real sense of earnestness to Mutant Mayhem that I didn't anticipate, but ended up really appreciating.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that you bring up how this film sort of amalgamates the 80s rad turtles and incorporates like modern like young Gen Z, maybe even Gen Alpha sort of attitudes and pop culture references in cornerstones.
It's very Zoomer core.
Yeah, because for the people who grew up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that 1987 cartoon, I believe, is the original. That is like, that's what they remember. They remember like the 80s, the excess, the rad, the skateboarding, the pizza, which is what we now associate with being like a stereotypical 80s teen, or preteen rather. And this is just doing the exact same thing. It's really modernizing the Turtles for that modern, younger audience. They're talking about Riz. They're talking about bacon, egg, and cheese. They're talking about getting it the Aki way, Abram.
Yeah, like that one doesn't even mean anything to me.
Yeah. Well, you're an East Coast guy, and you know, I would presume that if it would mean anything, it mean something to you, but apparently not. But I do appreciate that, and this is all to say that I really dig the performances that our main four actors give us here as well. They're really, really good, and the casting team did a really great job of picking out these four to have great chemistry and to sort of make the Turtles feel like they're 15 years old.
I believe also, Tanner, that they've recorded all of their VO in the booth together.
Yes.
Which helps a lot because there is a lot of scenes where there's a ton of crosstalk between the turtles.
Yes.
And I think it's very charming. And that's not something I necessarily expected, because to take it to the meta narrative of the Turtles progression again for a moment.
Okay.
You've got like the 90s movie that's a little bit darker. But the show was goofy. Part of how the show got made is it was, you know, it's a classic sort of toy tie-in show of the era. The comics were a little bit more serious than the show ended up being. The 2003 show is much more serious than what came before. The 2007 movie is even more gritty for whatever reason. And then it feels like Nickelodeon kind of course-corrected. And from what I understand, because I haven't really experienced it myself, like the Nickelodeon era of Turtles is very, like, silly.
Yes.
And the tone of this, I think, balances all of these eras very well. And it doesn't make many jokes at the expense of the characters in a way that feels sort of referential. Now, what I mean, Tanner, and we've talked about this together before, this idea that the modern blockbuster is like self-conscious of its characters. And my concern was, if like a Marvel character can't not make a joke at their own expense, how can our turtles not be making fun of the concept of turtles? I was very concerned about that, but they really don't do that.
Yeah.
They goof around at the fact that the guys are nerdy and don't know how to talk to April O'Neil and things like that. But I think that there's a real reverence for the material here, which I appreciated.
Yeah. I also wanted to note that we really steer clear of a lot of stereotypes and tropes of movies aimed at children and about children, I think, children characters.
Yeah.
Namely, I was dreading it for the entire 1 hour and 40-minute runtime, and it never came. The third act break of our team, we're just butting heads so much, and I don't want to be a team anymore.
Right.
Like, I am so tired of that trope, and I get why we do it so we can bring them back together in the third act again. But like, I'm so tired of it, and they don't do it here. And they do something that feels equally, if not more, like of a bonding experience for the Turtles. That they are really like going out on their own for the first time. They are fighting crime for the first time. They take down a giant mutated monster that's destroying New York City. and they do it all without falling into those tropes, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna talk about the monster fight, I think we should also talk about the other sort of marquee element of the film, which is its animation style.
Absolutely.
Which is sort of been called Spider-Verse like, which I think is
Yeah.
not really fair. I don't.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of. I think a more fair assessment is to say that this film, in its animation style and how it looks, exists because of the popularization
Yeah.
of Spider-Verse, but it's not necessarily like, let's take the Spider-Verse animation style and put it on TMNT. This feels much more like gritty and dirty, but not in like a dark way. It's like a sketchbook. Like there's sketch lines all over everything, and everything's like has a bit of a rough outline to it, and how it's
Yeah.
drawn and moves around. I really dig that.
Yeah, I mean, because the grittiness doesn't really enter the narrative, and I think it sort of stays at the aesthetic. And I think grunge is maybe better than gritty.
That's what it is. There you go.
Because like you think about the 2007 movie, and like Raphael's donning fucking Batman armor, and he's fighting Leonardo in the dark, in the rain on a rooftop. Like that's really not what this is.
No.
What it is more is just this sort of like punky and interesting. To me, it feels like somewhere between like sketchbook art and like claymation almost.
Yeah.
I think the use of these 3D models that feel a bit misproportioned, or maybe interestingly proportioned, especially like the human characters who have like strange like block heads and necks that are like shoot out
I
at this
love how
angle.
like just weird the humans look as well, because like side by side the turtles look pretty normal, like relatively. You have people with like round heads and tiny eyeballs and like square noses that are like lopsided. It's like, wow, I just love that. I do love those designs for even like those ancillary side characters.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other great benefit of this film's animation style is that it literally animates well. I mean, it does the sort of Spider, I think where it probably shares the greatest similarity with Spider-Verse beyond just being an animated movie that doesn't look like DreamWorks or Pixar, is that they do the lowered frame rate. Intentionally lower frame rate style, which I think is quite cool. But in these action sequences, which to me are some of the most exciting parts of the film, if you can believe it, the action sequences are exciting.
Wow.
There's such a fluidity to all of the movement and the camera work. Sometimes how quickly the camera moves to follow a turtle, like in the final sequence. I think it's very, very impressive how there's this great sense of, I think, visual clarity and kinetic energy to the action that doesn't compromise how like sketchy everything is. I think it's a very, very beautiful piece of just animation work.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I mean, just some sequences that are emblematic of that. I mean, the one that I think everyone will be sort of talking about, and I've already seen clipped on TikTok a number of times, is the No Diggity fight scene. Sort of compilation of them taking down multiple like crime bosses throughout New York City. It's just a cool sequence and just edited together very, very well. And you have that sweet ass song, and it's a good montage of it all. This movie is also something. It just has a lot of heart to it as well, I think. There is this whole message of acceptance. It's something that the turtles want. They feel rejected. They've sort of been told by Jackie Chan, Splinter, throughout their entire lives that humans are monsters and will abduct them and test them and milk them, as is made a joke a number of times in this film. The act of milking them for their blood, I guess.
Splinter and Jordan Peterson are equally afraid of the milking of young men.
It certainly seems that way, Abram. It certainly seems that way. And that, as I was talking about the animation style, it sort of struck me that it's so interesting that they decided to draw the humans as such like oddities existing in the real world, and they're like, those turtles are freaks. They're monsters. Like, you all look like monsters a little bit. Let's dial it back here. Do you want to talk about because we also have a massive vocal supporting cast here. Most of them are in the Superfly sort of mutant gang who cause some mayhem, if I do say so myself. You have who do you all have in here? You have Seth Rogen and Hannibal Buress is just one that randomly occurred to me, even though he has like maybe 3 lines. Seth Rogen, you have Ice Cube, as I mentioned, Paul Rudd, Post Malone, Giancarlo Esposito is Baxter Stockman. You have Rose Byrne as well. Just like a massive cast, and they all do very well. It's just fun to hear those voices coming out of these weird creatures.
Question for you, Tanner, because I don't know the answer. Who does
Yeah.
MrBeast play in the movie?
MrBeast plays Times Square guy, and we were trying to hear him in the theater. If you remember the guy, like the first guy they give the ooze cure to in that final action scene,
Yeah.
he like puts it in like a plastic bag or whatever,
Right.
and starts running. I'm pretty sure that's him.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think he also shows up earlier in the film, in like that flashback where Splinter takes him out in the Times Square for the first time. But I think that's MrBeast.
That's very interesting because I was listening for Jimmy as well, and I didn't hear him.
Yeah,
but also
he's credited as Times Square guy.
I'm also not the MrBeast fan that I know you are, so I figured you would have the better ability to hear. But
I'm a massive fan of Jimmy Beast.
Yes. Everything, Tanner, I agree with everything you got to say as usual.
Yeah.
The voice cast is truly exceptional. I do want to linger on that No Diggity sequence for a moment because I do think it's just super cool.
Yeah.
To me, the film is just a great vibe. I think that the vibes of Mutant Mayhem are very good. I love No Diggity. It's a favorite song of mine. So as soon as that started playing, I was quite excited. I think what's interesting about that sequence is because the voice cast is great. We're talking about the animation being great, the tone being great, the script being quite interesting, this No Diggity sequence being great, but I think it's emblematic of when the film is at its most energetic. I think it's at its best, but I think we lose that energy at some points. Maybe even after that No Diggity sequence, because then we go into this, what feels like a little bit of a lull.
Yeah, before we actually get into fighting a giant monster. I know what you mean, and I think we felt that when we were watching it as well. It was a bit like, okay, like even in that final, like what you think is gonna be not even that. When they get abducted and they're being milked or whatever, even that is like okay, yeah, are we doing this? And I think it feels even odder because that's not even the climax of the film. It's just kind of this initial hurdle that we need to get over for some reason in the script, which I find interesting.
Yeah,
and maybe just makes that feel more anticlimactic.
I mean, this is to me the biggest issue with the film because the film's about an hour, probably an hour 40 before credits, hour 45.
Yeah.
I think if you just took 10 minutes out, I think it would feel a lot better because there is this villain, like this shadowy woman who is milking the turtles. And I just don't think we really linger on her enough to make that subplot super compelling.
Yeah. It makes me think is like because we set it up at the beginning. Our cold open is like the origin of the ooze and Baxter Stockman, and I feel like they were like, well, if we're gonna use her as a post credits tease, spoilers, they're teasing Shredder for a potential sequel to this.
I didn't want to believe it. Scene.
Oh, didn't you? Okay.
No.
Okay. It's Shredder. He's like, call in the Shredder.
I figured.
Yeah. They're teasing him, and I feel like the screenwriter sat down and they said, well, if that's gonna happen, I feel like we need to reintroduce her and this like shadowy laboratory company at some point in the film as well. So it does feel kind of like jutted in there sort of oddly when the main bad guys that we're dealing with are Ice Cube and his merry gang.
Yeah, because I mean, the Splinter action sequence is very fun. I like seeing Splinter cut loose.
Yes.
I also like, just as a sidebar, that Splinter has a mullet when he's like a younger man. I did appreciate that. But no, I think that's where the film sags a little bit because even before we get captured, we're at the bowling alley for kind of a while, and we've got Marvin Gaye playing in the car chase for a while. I think it's good stuff. I just don't. I think this is just a little bit too much in a film that otherwise feels very, very well paced.
Yeah. Well, Abram, I have to wind it back here. Marvin Gaye in the car chase? Are you talking about the?
What's going on? That's not Marvin Gaye. What's going
on? Well, Marvin Gaye does have a song called "What's Going On," but that is "What's Going On" by Four Non-Blondes, the He-Man meme song.
See, I think I was putting together because as I'm wont to do, thinking things, including The Last Voyage of Demeter as a Hercule Poirot movie, I sometimes put information together wrong. So I'm like, I know Marvin Gaye has a song called "What's Going On." They're
Yeah.
saying what's going on. It must be Marvin Gaye.
Okay. Well, all right.
Clearly
Well,
untrue.
no. Yeah. Well, untrue. What else do you think about TMNT Mutant Mayhem? Anything else?
I like how much time we spend just watching the turtles have this sort of like forlorn relationship with the human world.
Yeah.
I think it's super fun, and seeing them just in the sewers.
Seeing them watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Watching,
hey, I dig that, man.
Yeah, watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off, fucking around making TikTok videos,
Yeah.
hanging out in the sewer.
Mm-hmm.
Splinter trying to throw a party to make him feel better about not being part of the larger world.
The having like the photorealistic Chris Evans was a little bit one of those like too much for me in pop culture references, but I do like the I'm Chris Pine, I'm the best Chris or whatever. I like that. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of really genuine moments here. I think they do a nice job of slowing things down in those sequences, and I think that's just why it's like there's just like too much plot towards the end, and there's a lot going on. I think we could just simplify just a little bit, because it is largely a simple narrative. I do like that Superfly is essentially just a mirror of Splinter with who reaches a different conclusion. Yeah. It's simple, effective storytelling. And ultimately, my takeaway from the film is that I had a great time. It sort of reconnected me to a latent love of the Turtles that I have.
Yeah.
And it got me very excited about hopefully a sequel, because there are a lot of sort of marquee Turtles things that are not here. Things that transcend the era of Turtles you're talking about. Obviously, Shredder and the Foot Clan, but also like Casey Jones.
Yeah.
And the Mousers and various other pieces of iconography and ideas that I kept sort of thinking were going to show up around any corner and then don't. And that it makes me excited to see another one of these. And I hope we get another. That's
I hope so too.
Takeaway.
I mean, you have a built-in trilogy because, as far as I'm aware, the Turtles only have like 3 villains, which is any assortment of other mutant animal hybrids.
Yeah.
Shredder and the Foot Clan, and then Krang.
Yeah, Krang.
Am I forgetting any? Is there anything else?
I'd have to really think about it. It's been a while.
Yeah,
I'm out of the game.
I don't know if there is.
I've been out of the game. I've been out of the Turtles game for too long. I will tell you, Tanner, I did buy some of those IDW comics after watching the movie last night.
Okay.
I'm very curious to read those because, again, 2003 Turtles, I love. I was watching retrospective the other day and realizing how much I've forgotten about the show. Because believe it or not, the things I did when I was aged 4 to 7 haven't really stuck with me too strongly.
Okay, all right.
But
can't relate.
I think Mutant Mayhem's ability to reinvent the Turtles for seemingly the success of all demographics, while also just presenting a really strong creative statement, is quite exceptional. And it's just another great animated film for the year. Proving once again, Tina, that animation is cinema.
I'm still on the other side of that fence. I think animation is not cinema, actually. But I'm going to go ahead and give Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem a 6.5 out of 10.
I will give it an 8.3 because of the 2003 show, and I had only thought as far as the 8.
All right, that's fine. That's just fine by me.
I will just say,
thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just want to say, here's my ranking. Leave yours
in
the comments.
Okay, here we go.
We'll start at the bottom. Number 4, Elemental.
Yes. I see. Okay.
Number 3, Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Number 2, Mutant Mayhem. Number 1, Super Mario Brothers.
All right. Well, that certainly is a ranking. Thank you so much, everyone. Let us know your ranking of the big animated features of the year, and we will see you next time.